Hey everyone, so today we're doing another school video. So today is our little bioethics presentation that we are just going to be reading and discussing, and all credit to everyone who needs to be credited for information, which is of course at the end. But yeah, so let's get started. Alright, so this is genetic counseling. So here is our little introduction, and we probably wrote too much, but well, you know Allison. So for our introduction is genetic counseling is a form of an informational session that gives information about the histories of how genetic conditions can affect an individual or their families. This information helps individuals make informed decisions and understanding of their history to work out plans about future expectations or risks of testing and to give help and support. The genetic counselors are professionals who have expertise in genetics, but also communications and counseling to give support for different needs, values, and beliefs. Genetic counseling is often done for those who feel they are at a higher risk of having genetic illness or having a child with an illness because of previous family history, close relative history, and women who have had difficult issues in pregnancy. Genetic counseling provides documentations of education to patients and work to further research histories of genetics and how that can affect several generations through different syndromes and disorders. Genetic counselors can look for specific issues in genes such as screening and risks of hereditary inheritance of cancers and evaluating the risks for such and how they can affect someone mentally, emotionally, and physically. So essentially, through meeting our modern day technologies and testing that is very advanced nowadays and easy to understand, it is a lot faster than previous methods of counseling and understanding genetics, and this basically just gives insight into understanding how people feel about their disorders and their conditions and how to understand and kind of express it to them and make them aware of how it can affect them and their family, and kind of go through family trees and history and what the patterns are in detecting these disorders. And our little chart diagram here represents the basics of genetic counseling and how it connects to tests, education, and risks, which are all things that are discussed and understood. So for some of the pros and advantages of it, genetic counseling works with supporting both genetic facts and testing and dealing with the emotions associated with histories of a diagnosis and how it can affect generations to live better future lives with science and psychology. It helps people react to their illness or grief in their genetic history and how that affects their emotional state. It can work to identify certain genetic diseases and disorders. If they are identified, then there can be possible solutions and treatment, and it can be less anxiety-inducing to get potential treatment advice and concerns. It can help make informed decisions and can lead patients into getting more appropriate testing, especially in passing on conditions or pregnancy complications. It is often determined by testing of cytogenetic, biochemical, and molecular for the basics, leading to more accurate tests depending on the case. It helps families to understand each other and their history, for family systems to be regulated relating to problems of a stronger connection. Family is determined by looking at the history of treatments and seek support in each other to find the best option. Advice shows a lot of respect and support and gives empowerment going forward based on past family experiences and how their treatments work in order to make new decisions. It gives empowerment in the decisions previously taken they are monitored in the future. So there's basically a more emotional aspect that is connected with it more than just regular science and facts of a diagnosis that say this is this, that is that, this is this. Because this kind of gives more of an insight into understanding why and kind of connecting it back to the family, and it can help someone understand more, as it can be kind of hard to process things that have happened in people's families and things that can affect future generations, and it can just be really difficult and kind of hard to understand. So having the support to understand the emotional problems that may come with it and how someone feels about it and making sure that they can get the right help is really important in, a person's well-being, but also just how it could affect them and those around them. And it brings good connections to their families and kind of helps them to understand what's going on based on what they can determine and if there is hope in future treatments or fixing the generations, and it's just a really good thing to have. And this can kind of connect to regular testing, which can determine the results, but this can also determine what can be done with it and give options for one to choose and understand what might be right for them and what would work for them and what has worked for previous history. So that kind of connects all back to it. And our chart image represents how the benefits of genetic counseling are connected from the experiences from the patient and how that can help patients and doctors. So for our cons and negative associations, getting evaluated could lead to some potential unwanted and negative results, as some might get a diagnosis they do not want that impacts them in a negative way. It can affect personal relationships or children giving concern. The determination of issues within the genes of DNA can be harmful for one to believe that their DNA is wrong and having to live with genetic issues. The diagnosis can also be uncertain, which can have impact on trying to figure out genetic risks if unsure. Genetic counseling can also have negative opinions of others. The system is also not yet that everyone is eligible for counseling to be tested and evaluated, as there are certain criteria that relate to age, gender, family, and suspected diagnosis. People can go to genetic counseling for reasons to change their children, that may be beyond disorders in an attempt to get a certain child they want, and the testing can be inappropriate. The children can still be born imperfectly without appropriate tests to fix this, leading to more risky actions and worse consequences. Some treatment from genetic counseling may cause more problems, as they are set to fix another but can cause possible risks of other conditions. These treatments can cause increased risk of cancer, allergic reactions, and organ/tissue damage. And not all of the genes can be identified to assure that one will be diagnosed. Counseling can give testing resources to find mutated genes, but it may not identify everything or find all of the defects. Often, as samples taken from testing can often only identify the extreme and obvious conditions, missing the more common ones that can be just as bad. So essentially, the testing can be a little too good, and that can cause issues in people's families. And some people may find it invasive, that people can invade onto their personal confidentiality and what they wanted for their families, and kind of having all the genetic information kind of be overwhelming to people. And some people may get advice that they don't want or information that they don't want, and kind of can connect it to things in their families that can kind of harm them as a circle. But in the end, it does reflect on how people are diagnosed and what they believe in the diagnosis, and if the treatment is right for them. And if the treatment can lead to something worse, that can cause a problem. And our chart shows a more negative side of the risks of diagnosis and how mutations can be detected by counseling and how it can lead to interventions, but is not all positive. Then on to the opinion. For those who meet the criteria for counseling, it can be a good thing to look into, but not entirely depend on it. It can give you good information and help in history into a background, but other testing would make it more accurate. Both kinds of information through counseling and testing can be helpful. Treatment does have the potential to be good or bad. The outcome can be uncertain, but just having awareness for potential treatment and prevention is really important. Genetic counseling at least gives awareness to the types of treatment, whether the outcome is good or bad, and explains. And the treatment is usually thought out to the situation and planned. Genetic counseling can be good mentally, as it is not always just talking about the problems with facts, but the emotions, helping through the situations to give family support and what can be done. It can ease mental health with the risks established to help future generations, even with disorders, to determine and get support. Giving support and decisions is good, even if delivering bad news with help. Regular medical does not always involve psychiatric possibilities in health, but genetic counseling does work in applying those aspects to make it work. There are causes of mental health later leading to more signs and symptoms of diseases. Mental health can also have genetic links in generations, so if the medical team works in both ways help, then the conditions can improve. Making informed decisions and having support and help is based only on the facts of genetic history and gives empowerment to make decisions for risk, treatment, potential children, and more. The basics are set based on the actual history, but the choices are given through those who have the actual experience giving good decisions. So it is believed that this is a nice idea, and it can work out, but it really depends on what the counseling is needed for, the reason for it, and who it affects. And basically, there can be different reasons for different things, but just getting an understanding can be a good thing. Although it really depends on what the situation is that is being looked into, if it is just generic or if there's a certain reason. And this image gives an idea of how genetic counseling looks, with support from relatives and talking professionally and understanding each other. Now, obviously, cannot guarantee what the actual setting or place will look like, but this kind of gives an idea of how it's professional, kind of understanding and a working together sort of idea. Then we have our very long list of sources, and yeah, I went overboard a bit there, and then we have this video right here, and then the bonus. So, yeah, thank you, and have a good day.